Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about today? Fellowship of the Ring, trick-taking game, or as everyone's calling it, The Crew, Lord of the Rings, cooperative trick-taking set in the Lord of the Rings universe, specifically, obviously, the Fellowship of the Ring version. So, what do you need to know? Whether or not it's right for you, and is it better than The Crew? Should you get it over The Crew? Is it more Thematic Incorporation? Does it give you more variability? But does it have the replayability? Is it going to be one of your favorite games of the year? Is this going to be a good one? It is potentially that good. Let's go. So the basic gist of this is it's freaking amazing. How do I fill 9 other minutes of a video to tell you about this game? Well, okay, let me just give you the briefest of synopsis, slight spoilers, and then why this also, regardless, in more of a legacy game style, still might be potentially one of your favorite games of the year, even though, arguably, it doesn't have as much long-term replayability as The Crew in theory, if you're one of those people. However, if you just like the mix match, create your own, do it yourself, scenario generator in the dungeon crawl style person game situation, it also has more replayability, I'd argue, in that same sense, because, well, we'll get there. At the end, you just do whatever you want. So in this game, you are given chapters, essentially your individual scenarios, and you are given a splattering of characters that you get to choose from that are all going to have, as you can see at the top of the board here, different ways that they're going to be winning. And we have Frodo here, who's holding the One Ring right now, because that is going to play a role in how you're playing. And the rings are numbered 1 to 5. All of the other suits are numbered 1 to 8. And you're going to be subsequently just playing tricks in order to, well, achieve your victory conditions. Sometimes you have to play all of the tricks in the rounds, and some of them you only have to play until you get the victory conditions on the cards of the characters you've chosen. This game actually offers you a 2-player as well as the 3 and 4 dynamics, which really are freaking working. And what you can see in front of me is a pseudo to show you what the 2-player looks like, as I've played this many a round with 2 players. And what you have is your sort of Seven Wonders Duel-esque, or your Seven Wonders Ring Duel-esque, if you will, with the most recent reincorporation of the cards that are going to be available to you as the person choosing for one of the NPCs or the Automa in this situation. And just like with the Seven Wonders Duel, you get to choose from one of the face-up cards that's available to you on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis. You have to follow just like you would in any normal trick-taking game. This token right here, which is super nice quality, by the way, indicates whether or not rings have been broken, sort of like with hearts. If hearts have not been broken, if the rings have not been broken, you cannot leave with them, again, unless that is all you have in your hand. The other twist on this is the One Ring. The One Ring, meaning the ring card that is not the highest, actually. The One Ring gives you the ability to either win the trick, the highest card in the game altogether, or you can just play it as a regular one. And that is going to be Frodo. And so that person doesn't really have a choice. Everyone else, based on the chapter cards here, will have the ability to choose from the characters that are listed. And obviously, if you're playing with 2 characters, you have to choose Frodo and Bilbo, and then you have your choices if you're playing with 3 or 4 of Gandalf and Pippin, and it tells you the victory conditions over there. Now, there's going to be a bunch of other mitigations, switching, and strategies to go along with this, and you're going to have other things that are incorporated, including items that may help you or may hurt you in terms of how you're going to be gathering these tricks or how you're going to change getting them in the first place, including the number of tricks or the suit of those tricks or the number of the card of the suit that you need. And that goes into the spoilers here as just, the briefest of briefest spoilers here. If you want to pause this video, go to the end or go to the final thoughts, you can do that. But I'm going to give you a little bit of spoilers, but not too much, because it's essential to know actually how you're going to be incorporating this game. Is a fair number of these characters are going to be incorporating the threat deck here. And these threat cards are, again, similarly going to be numbered. And right here, we have 4 of them. There may be more when you incorporate other cards later on in the chapters and the scenarios, but you're going to be drawing one of these with some of the characters, and then they will have to say, as an example for the chapter number 2, one of the characters there draws one of these cards, and they have to take a certain suit and win that number of that suit. So if they draw the 1, they'd have to win the Hills 1, for example. The Hills being, hills, right? I say hills at the bottom. And so that's the sort of thing that you're going to be doing. And obviously, at more players, there's going to be more objectives you're going to have to complete. So it's a balancing act of having more control, but having more options, and determining which of those characters you want to play on a round-by-round basis, which leads to, just like with The Crew, some amazing moments of cleverness and some amazing moments of frustration because you're just kind of screwed. Well, just like with the crew, if you lose, what do? You just shuffle up and play again. And that is the best thing about this game, is that you also just can't play one round. You just can't play one chapter. You get sucked in, just like with Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. I would make the argument that Thematic Incorporation never is the appeal for me in a game, and it is never the make it or break it. However, I will also argue, just like I did with that game, that it also just takes a game that you're kind of like, okay, this is good, to a whoa, right? And it does that here. I really love the incorporation of the items, of the threats, of the individual character aspects. And it doesn't just go straight off of the movies if that's what you're worried about, right? That's what this box is right here on the side of the board, is that you have parts 1 and parts 2 with chapters 2 through 11 here and chapters 12 and on to the end. And that leads me to sort of the end portion of this, is they actually, in the rulebook, give you a how do you do the incorporation of, well, the replayability at the end, because I didn't mention this, but there is also a solo gameplay, but you don't play Trick Takers as a solo one, unless you just have that one trick taking game from a year or two ago on crowdfunding, and that was a really good one, but that's a whole side, another video here. But the incorporation of this is really directly straight from the rules, where they say, hey, grab all the black ones, grab all the gold ones, mix them all together, grab this number of characters, this number of gifts, and this number of special black riders, and mix them all up, and then just, create your own scenario and do it however you want. And so for the argument that maybe you run out of scenarios, you played all the scenarios, the crew has tons more scenarios than this has, and of the 18 chapters that are available to you, I mean, yes, there is quite a large variety. Again, spoilers here for a second. If you want to turn away, again, this is the part to spoil. So as you're going through, again, you can see chapters 2, they show you the objectives on the backside here. And so you can see short, finish all the chosen characters. Now, there is also long, which means that you can play it over several rounds, meaning you've played all your cards, you haven't completed all the characters, while you can rinse and repeat and just shuffle them up and deal them again to try and complete the rest. And so that's a nice feature, because some of these are actually terribly difficult. And so the finickiness of having to squeeze them in a certain number of tricks isn't necessarily always necessary. So that's really cool. And again, I really love the art on this. Here you can see different objectives, play the forest cards in the final trick. Doesn't have to win it though. And the last part I didn't really cover here though is exchange. Exchange is the great way of mitigation that a lot of these other trick-taking games don't have, especially with some of the crew stuff, where you get to change one of your cards. You get to choose one of the cards in your hand and you just choose to get it to someone else. Or they give one to you and then you give one back to them. Or at the beginning of every round, you get to set one of these cards aside from the deck, and that's the lost card. And some characters will be able to grab that lost card. Some characters will be able to switch with that lost card. And so it just gives a little bit of mitigation that's there. Or some players will get rid of cards, so they'll have less cards than the number of rounds or tricks in a round that you will play. Or some might have more than, which gives you, again, more mitigation, more options. Here are some of the other spoilers that I mentioned. You have special black riders that I mentioned when you're setting it up for the end game scenario things. You have items here like build a pony. I know he's not exactly an item, but win exactly one trick. Then you also have things, if you keep on scrolling here, more special black riders, and then you get past some of the other characters here, and then you start getting to items here that are going to give you different ways. Build a pony we passed, but then also the shards of Narsil here replaces your threat card, choose a range for your goal. So it gives you ways of mitigating in a positive way, not just a negative way there as well. So imagine just giving a ton of variety, a ton of mismatch, and a ton of just chaotic fun. That's what this game is. And so when I joked about this game after it was announced, like, this is not Lord of the Rings, the trick-taking game. This is Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game. So the fact that this is that good means that we're going to get a Two Towers edition, just like the crew had two versions. You got the space and you got the sea. Guess what? We're probably going to have the Two Towers, and we're probably going to have Return of the King. And if it stays anything like the crew, I would imagine that they're going to build on it and make the second and third iterations even better, which is really exciting because this game is really freaking good. And I just really love it. And the biggest thing is whether or not you can do the legacy style campaign situation, right? Like, are you a one and done and playing this 18 times through, which you really won't play 18 times through. You'll probably play more like 25 or 30, depending on how trick-taking savvy you are. And do you really like that endgame scenario generator that a lot of the dungeon crawl cool guys are doing nowadays too, to give you your mix match modularity that everyone is claiming they need for replayability's sake? Because, this may still only take you, 10 to 12 hours of straight gameplay if you only do the scenarios like I mentioned. only, right? Or you can just play it ad nauseum and you don't even need to use any of the stuff in there. If you just want to go deep into the deep end and just say screw the story, you can completely do that too. Did I mention I really love the freaking artwork on those close-ups for this deck? I mean, again, I'm not spoiling all of the other deck for you, but I mean, I really like some of this artwork. I like this style. I think it works well for like a whimsy, and I think it works much better than any graphic stills from a movie or a comic or a book elsewhere. And so it just, again, raises the enjoyment factor, sort of like the slide rule of the Ring Wraith did in Seven Wonders Duel for Middle-earth. It shouldn't, but it does. I can't explain it, but I know what I like it. I mean, so without going into too many spoilers of what else you're going to see and what else twists that are there, it just freaking works. And these tokens, you're maybe wondering what they're for, but I mean, they're literally for just showing that you've completed your objective, because I didn't mention it, buried the lead, but this is like the crew, like the game, like the mind, those sorts of things. It is a limited communication game, so you're not able to show people or tell people what you have, and so you're going to be having to actually play it along those lines. So if those are the other types of games that you like, the gang, the game, like I am a huge fan of those, and now you combined it with Lord of the Rings, you combined it with what the crew has brought. Yes, this is a game that will fit alongside the crew. You know, the crew is going to give me more just, you know, straightforwardness. This is going to give you more nuance. It's going to give you a little bit different of a vibe, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult in different ways, but it's going to also be well enough received that you can have both of them in your collection equally if this is your type of game in the first place, and not worry that you're really going to have a game killer. One's going to completely replace the other. You can play each of them alongside of them as someone who loves trick takers and has the game duel, has the gang from last year, has trick takers, the import game. And I love them all, and they all have their own equal place. And this is just going to be one of those that's also probably easier to play with casuals who are going, why the crew, what are you talking? Oh, Lord of the Rings. It shouldn't do that, folks, but it does. It has that effect on IPs, and it gets people to play your games. And that's what the question always gets asked for, is how do I get more people to play board games? You give them this. You give them freaking something that's lovable from an IP standpoint, that's recognizable, and that freaking stands on its own from a gameplay standpoint for all comers. So let's compare this, though, to the other Lord of the Rings games. And you know what? I don't think it's as big of a stretch as if I had said this at the beginning of the video, that this is the best Lord of the Rings game. You would have been like, oh, he's hyperbolating, right? He's jumping the shark with this one. Okay, let's break it down a little bit. What else we got going on, the major names? We have Lord of the Rings, Journey in Middle-earth, right? The super expensive miniature game, you know, scenario driven. We've got Lord of the Rings, the LCG. We have, well, Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. We have Lord of the Rings, Confrontation x2, soon to be Confrontation x3. Can't forget about War of the Ring either. You know, right there, that's a fair smattering. You've got the recent adventure book one as well. You've got the old deck building, dice building games in addition. You also have War of the Ring, the card game as well. So let's break this down. Which of these plays really well at 3 and 4 player counts under an hour and a half that doesn't take a half an hour teach? Oh, that's right. None of them. And that's where I'm going with this, right? Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth was my #1 game of 2024. War of the Ring is regarded as one of the best 2-player games ever. 2 players. One of them 2 players only with a half an hour time frame. One of them 2 players, and you have that long even to explain the rules. Confrontation is a fantastic stratego for 2 players that requires a meta style of things. The LCG game, you arguably is best at 1, and you have to deck construct. Where is the 3 and 4 player game? You know, the upcoming, just recently announced Lord of the Rings Pandemic, right, is a potential vying for competition, but it's Pandemic. So do you like that? This is a twist and a spin on it. So if I said this is the best 3 to 4 player Lord of the Rings game, you know what? I'd fight you in the comment section down below. So there you go. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, a trick-taking game. They sent it to me. I'm talking about it, and I love it. Again, January, hot, heavy. Some of the best games of the year are already coming out. There you go. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Subscribe. I have a Patreon too. Woo! Peace out.